Alright, so here's the deal. My kid, Max, wanted to make some extra cash this summer. Simple, right? A lemonade stand in our front yard. Classic childhood dream, Norman Rockwell type stuff. But, of course, we live in an HOA. And if there's one thing I've learned about HOAs, it's that they exist to suck the joy out of life like a vampire with a clipboard. Enter Karen. Yeah, her real name is Karen, and let's be real. She's a Karen through and through. She's the head of our HOA and wields her power, like she's some medieval queen presiding over the kingdom of suburbia. You know the type. Short, overly rigid haircut, pastel sweater draped over her shoulders like she's about to golf with Satan himself. So anyway, Max and I set up shop. Nothing fancy, just a little wooden stand, some fresh lemonade, and a cute sign that said, ice-cold lemonade, $1. Because apparently, kids don't know inflation. Within an hour, business was booming. Neighborhood kids ran up with crumpled dollar bills. Parents smiled as they watched their kids experience a tiny sliver of capitalism before the real world crushes them. It was perfect. And then, she arrived. I saw her before I heard her. That's the thing about Karens, they don't just appear. They materialize. 1 second, you're living your life, and the next, there's a shadow looming over you, smelling faintly of vanilla-scented rage. Excuse me, she said, voice dripping with entitlement. What is this? I turned slowly, hoping, praying, that she wasn't talking to us. Nope, dead-on eye contact. Max, being the adorable and oblivious kid he is, beamed up at her and chirped, "It's my lemonade stand. Want some?" Karen recoiled like he'd just offered her a cup of hot urine. "You can't just set up a business here," she scoffed, adjusting her oversized sunglasses. "Do you have a permit?" "A permit? For a child selling lemonade in his own yard." I stared at her for a solid 3 seconds, trying to process if she was actually serious or if this was some sort of elaborate HOA hazing ritual. "You're joking, right?" I finally said. She was not joking. "The HOA has regulations," she continued, like she was quoting from the Bible of fun killing. "All businesses must be registered and approved by the board. Selling food requires a health inspection, and signage must be pre-approved." She gestured at Max's homemade sign like it personally offended her. "This is not compliant." I glanced down at my son, who was now gripping the lemonade pitcher like it was his only defense against tyranny. His lip trembled. "Oh hell no. You're telling me my 7-year-old needs a business license and a health inspection to sell lemonade in our own yard?" "Rules are rules," she said, folding her arms like she'd just won some grand moral victory. And that's when I decided this was war. Look, I could have just shut down the stand. I could have been a responsible adult, told Max that some people suck, and moved on. But that's not who I am. I don't let Karens win. So I did what any self-respecting, mildly petty person would do. I found a loophole. That night, I scoured the HOA handbook, which, by the way, is 54 pages long. Who writes this stuff? And guess what? Nowhere did it actually say children couldn't run a lemonade stand. Businesses? Yes. But children's activities? Not a word. The next morning, Max was back out there. But this time, there was a significant difference. Instead of a business, we were now hosting Max's Summer Lemonade Club. Membership fee, $1. Not a business. A club. And the lemonade? Totally free for members. Karen was not pleased. It took all of 2 hours before she stomped up to us again, looking like she'd just bitten into a lemon herself. "What is this?" she demanded. Max, now fully briefed on our master plan, grinned and said, "It's my club. Want to join? First rule is you gotta be nice." I swear to God. I saw steam come out of her ears. "This is a blatant attempt to circumvent HOA rules," she hissed. "Which rule, exactly?" I asked, playing dumb. "Because I checked the handbook. It says businesses need approval. This isn't a business. It's a club." Her jaw clenched so hard I thought she might crack a molar. "I'll be bringing this up at the next HOA meeting." "Cool. I'll bring snacks," I said with a grin. She turned and marched off, probably to write an angry email in Comic Sans. Oh, but wait. It gets so much better. 2 days later, I got a notice in the mail. Yep, She filed a formal complaint against us. The reason? Health hazard. Unlicensed beverage distribution was livid. And at this point, I knew I had two options. Firstly, shut it down and let her win. Secondly, go full petty. Take a wild guess which one I picked. So where were we? Yes, Karen had just filed a formal complaint against my 7-year-old's lemonade club for being a health hazard because obviously unlicensed lemonade poses a grave threat to the delicate ecosystem of suburbia. Now, I could have just laughed this off, maybe framed the letter as a hilarious reminder of how ridiculous people can be. But no, Karen wanted a fight. She was getting a fight. I cracked my knuckles, poured myself a legally unsanctioned lemonade, and got to work. I read that complaint front to back, looking for an angle. And then bingo. See, Karen's complaint specifically stated that our stand was an unauthorized food distribution service. That means she had filed it under the HOA's commercial business violations section. And guess what? According to the same handbook, the only people authorized to enforce those violations were the HOA's Commercial Compliance Committee. Sounds official, right? Yeah, well, the HOA didn't have one. Because, surprise, surprise, our neighborhood is entirely residential, zero businesses. Which meant that, per their own rules, Karen's complaint was completely invalid. I could practically hear her teeth grinding as I typed up my official response. Dear HO, thank you for your concern regarding my son's children's club, which does not fall under any commercial regulations as outlined in Section 4B of the HOA Handbook. Additionally, per Section 7C, enforcement of business-related violations is exclusively handled by the Commercial Compliance Committee, which does not exist. Given this, I assume the complaint was filed in error. Kindly correct this mistake and remove the violation immediately. Best regards, your favorite neighbor. I even attached a printed copy of the handbook pages, just in case they suddenly forgot their own rules. Now, I could have just left it at that. But Karen had been running this HOA like her personal fiefdom for years, and I was tired of it. So when I found out they were going to discuss our case at the next HOA meeting, oh, you bet I showed up. The room was a sad little gathering of suburban misery. Half the people were only there because their spouse dragged them, and the other half were there to complain about fences that were 1 inch too high. Karen, sitting at the head of the table like some kind of dictator in a J. Crew cardigan, cleared her throat. We need to address a serious issue, she began, her voice dripping with self-importance. A resident has been operating an unlicensed food service, which is in clear violation of... Actually, I cut in, holding up a thick binder of HOA policies. I printed the whole damn thing just for effect. That's not true, she blinked. Excuse me? I checked the rules, I said, flipping through pages for dramatic effect. And this isn't a commercial violation because it's not a business. It's a children's club. And even if it were a business, the complaint should have been handled by the Commercial Compliance Committee, which, oh wait, doesn't exist. The room was dead silent. Karen's face turned an impressive shade of red. Well, this still violates some rules. Which rules? I asked, folding my arms. Because I've got the handbook right here, and I'm happy to go through it. Someone in the back coughed to hide a laugh. I could see Karen mentally short-circuiting. She wasn't used to being challenged. She was used to people just rolling over. But I wasn't done yet. Oh, and one more thing, I added, flipping to another section. I'd like to file an official complaint of my own. Karen's head snapped up. What? I turned to the HOA treasurer. Karen filed a false complaint, knowingly misapplying HOA regulations, which is an abuse of power under Section 3D of the handbook. The penalty for that is... Oh, look, a $50 fine. The treasurer's eyebrows shot up. Karen's face somehow went even redder. This is ridiculous, she sputtered. Is it? I said. Because rules are rules, Karen. I could see 3 different people in the room trying not to laugh. At this point, the HOA president, who honestly looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, just sighed and rubbed his temples. Look, maybe we should just drop this whole thing? Agreed, I said cheerfully. As long as Karen withdraws her complaint and acknowledges that my son's club is not violating any rules, Karen looked like she wanted to hurl a chair across the room. But she had no choice. Fine, she muttered. Louder, please, I said. She glared daggers at me. I withdraw the complaint. The treasurer coughed. And the fine? Karen clenched her jaw so hard I thought she might break a tooth. Waved. Victory. Oh, but wait, it gets even better. You'd think she would have just taken the loss and moved on, right? Wrong. Karen, in all her bitter glory, called the county health department on us. Oh yes, she actually tried to get a government agency involved. Too bad for her. I had already called them myself earlier that week, just to double-check the laws. The guy I spoke with literally laughed when I explained the situation and said, yeah, we don't regulate lemonade stands, especially not for kids. Whoever reported you is wasting their time. So when the inspector showed up at my house, because they actually had to send someone, he took one look at the situation, sighed, and said, Karen? Me? Karen? Inspector. Deep, soul-weary sigh. The man barely glanced at our little stand before saying, yeah, this is fine. I'll file the report as unfounded. And just to twist the knife a little deeper, I asked, hey, just out of curiosity, is filing a false health complaint against a resident a punishable offense? He perked up. Oh, absolutely. False reports waste county resources. It's a misdemeanor. Me, grinning, good to know. Karen's face when she realized she just committed an actual crime? Priceless. By the end of the day, she had to drop everything, the complaint, the fines, the HOA drama. And as a final cherry on top, Max's Lemonade Club? Business was booming. Because now, everyone in the neighborhood wanted to support the kid who took down Karen. And that, my friends, is how a clipboard-wielding tyrant got publicly humiliated over a cup of lemonade. So, at this point, you'd think Karen would have learned her lesson. She got humiliated at the HOA meeting, got called out for filing a false complaint, and then had the county health department tell her to shove it. But no, Karen didn't just take the L and move on. Oh no, she doubled down. Because when you're that deep into delusion, there's only one thing left to do: full-blown sabotage. A week after the health department incident, I got a brand new letter from the HOA. This one had the usual overly formal nonsense, but the important part was this: effective immediately, all outdoor sales, clubs, and gatherings must be pre-approved by the HOA board. Any unauthorized activity will result in fines and possible legal action. In other words, Karen lost, so now she's trying to change the rules entirely. Classic. Max, my 7-year-old, squinted at the letter and said, so, does this mean no lemonade? Oh, sweet summer child. This means war, I muttered. Karen really thought she could outmaneuver me with a last-minute rule change? Cute. I grabbed the HOA handbook, which at this point I basically had memorized, and looked up how new rules get approved. And guess what? HOA rules must be voted on by the community. Meaning Karen can't just make up new laws whenever she feels like it. So I did what any responsible petty adult would do. I rallied the troops. I went door to door, chatting up neighbors. Turns out, a lot of people were already sick of Karen's power trips. Oh, she fined me for using the wrong shade of blue on my mailbox. One guy grumbled. She made me move my garden gnome because it disrupted the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. Another woman said, rolling her eyes. By the end of the day, I had a full-fledged army. And when the next HOA meeting rolled around, we packed the place. Karen was sitting at her little dictator table, smug as hell, ready to enforce her brand new rule. But before she could open her mouth, I stood up. Before we discuss anything else, I said, holding up the letter, I move to vote on whether this new rule is valid. Karen's face immediately dropped. That's not how this works. Actually, it is, I said, flipping to the rulebook right in front of everyone. Per Section 12A, new rules must be voted on by the community before they go into effect. Karen's eye twitched. I turned to the room. All in favor of keeping the rule? Crickets. I smirked. All opposed. Every single hand went up. Karen's face turned the color of expired mayonnaise. That settles it, I said cheerfully. Rule denied. Karen physically shook with rage. But there was nothing she could do. Max's Lemonade Club was still in business. At this point, Karen had lost every battle. The logical thing to do would have been to give up. But Karen went full villain. That night, at around midnight, my doorbell camera caught her sneaking into my yard with a garbage bag. This woman, this grown-ass adult woman, was trying to steal my kid's lemonade stand. At midnight, I had the whole thing on video, her fumbling with the stand, trying to pick it up, realizing it was heavier than she thought, and then full-on eating shit on my lawn. It was glorious. The next morning, I printed out screenshots of her mid-fall, put them in an envelope, and left them on her doorstep with a note. Nice try, and smiley face. And just like that, Karen finally broke. She stopped fighting, stopped sending letters, stopped showing up to meetings. Rumor has it she put her house up for sale a few months later. As for Max, his Lemonade Club, still thriving. And best of all, we renamed it. Now, right on the front of his little stand, there's a brand new sign. Karen's Lemonade, sweet, but still very bitter. And every time a neighbor sees it, they laugh. Because Karen, she's gone. And lemonade is forever. And that, my friends, is how I completely broke an HOA Karen over a cup of lemonade.